Today, we're talking about a man who was fired by Enzo Ferrari during Ferrari's Palace Revolt, aka the Great Walkout, aka Ferrari's Night of the Long Knives. No, not him. No, that's not him either. He never worked for Ferrari. That's him. Giotto Bizzarrini. Never heard of him? Well, he was only the man behind the legendary Ferrari 250 GTO, the V12s used by Lamborghini's supercars for decades, and even a sports car company of his own name. Today, we're diving into the life of Giotto Bizzarrini, whose relentless pursuit for speed and glory was too fast to keep up, even for his own cars. Bizzarrini was born to a wealthy family of farmers in Livorno, Italy. With a gift for math and numbers, he graduated from the University of Pisa in 1953 with an engineering degree, and was immediately employed by Alfa Romeo, where he worked on the development of the Giulietta. And his exceptional talent as an engineer and a test driver soon landed him an offer at a prestigious Italian sports car company. Upon arriving at Ferrari in 1957, he headed the illustrious company's sports car development team. During his time at Ferrari, Bizzarrini displayed his genius in making fast cars go even faster. And soon he was handpicked by Enzo Ferrari himself to begin development on modifying the 250 short wheelbase to take on the formidable Jaguar E-Type. And what resulted was the 250 GTO. Well, kind of, because Bizzarrini was fired before his work could come to fruition. To understand what happened, we have to talk about the Palace Revolt. Mr. Ferrari has a rather unfair portrayal in popular media today, depicting him as an uncompromising and tyrannical figure who never held back from ridding of those who he didn't agree with. Because he was. And the Palace Revolt at Ferrari was perhaps the most infamous event that characterized Enzo Ferrari as a ruthless leader. But in Ferrari's defense, the event was not without his reasons. The Palace Revolt was triggered by a firing of Ferrari's then commercial director Girolamo Gardini. You see, Gardini had filed a complaint to Enzo, claiming that Laura Ferrari, Enzo's wife, was interfering too much with the factory's operations, so Gardini wanted her out. Although the exact accusations are unclear, what is clear is that Gardini's irritation was shared by many in the factory. Because when Enzo responded to Gardini's complaint by firing him, 8 of some of the most talented and senior engineers and designers at Ferrari, including Giotto Bizzarrini, filed a letter protesting the firing of Gardini and walked out of the company altogether. It was them or her. Once again, Enzo chose his wife. This probably wasn't a passionate display of husbandly love, however, but that story is way beyond the scope of this video. As unfortunate as the circumstances were for the Ferraris, Giotto Bizzarrini, who was working on the 250 GTO at the time, was now out of a job. But not for long. Giotto, alongside ex-Ferrari personnel Carlo Citti and Romolo Tavoni, founded the ATS, with funding provided by a young Count Giovanni Volpi. Count Volpi was a wealthy Italian aristocrat, and the owner of Scuderia Serenissima racing team that fielded Ferrari sports cars. The Count was a loyal client of Ferrari, but this was to change with his funding of the ATS. You see, the ATS was basically founded by ex-Ferrari personnel, who set out to rival Ferraris both on the track and on the road. Although an internal fissure and lack of additional investments eventually led to their downfall, this ill-fated venture still soured Count Volpi's relationship with Enzo Ferrari, who was understandably unhappy about his clients sponsoring the people he had fired just moments ago. In a petty act of revenge, Enzo canceled the order of 2 brand new 250 GTOs the Count had bought. The Count, with good reason, was very upset. As an act of vengeance against the petty revenge, the Count instead hired Bizzarrini to modify his personal short wheelbase 250 GT that could take on the Ferrari 250 GTO at the next Le Mans. And Bizzarrini took on the challenge with little hesitation. He was going to build a Ferrari beater. Obviously, the Breadvan was not its official name, but a nickname given by a British press given its odd form. But this wasn't the first time Bizzarrini's car was ridiculed for the way it looked. Even the 250 GTOs were never initially admired for their looks. In fact, they were derided for how ugly they were compared to its original form, the short wheelbase 250 GTs. But Bizzarrini, who had created these machines, was an engineer with very simple yet effective rules. 1. The car had to have equal weight distribution. 2. They had to weigh as little as possible. And 3. Ride as low as possible. If the car had to look a particular way to conform to these principles, then it would. The bodies of the 250 GTO and its newest rival 250 GT Breadvan were shaped by hand, with little consideration for how it pleased the spectators' eyes from the grandstands. What made the 250 GT Breadvan particularly odd-looking, however, was Bizzarrini's extreme interpretation of the comtail. Whilst the ideal aerodynamic shape of a car is a teardrop, with the air flowing smoothly over the top of the car, the long tail was too impractical to be implemented on road cars. But then all of a sudden, a German aerodynamicist Wunibald Kamm appeared and discovered that by abruptly chopping off the tail, the air behaved as if it still had a tail. The Kamm-back design, which incorporates an abruptly cut rear end, creates a wake in the back of the car, which prevents the clean air flowing over the car from mixing into the turbulent region. This created an aero effect similar to the one created by an elongated tail, but in a smaller package. And the design proved to be rapid indeed. At the 1962 Le Mans, the Breadvan debuted alongside its half-brother and rival, the 250 GTO. Weighing less and riding lower, the Breadvan bolted past the Ferraris and stayed ahead. But after 4 hours, the prop shaft decided to give up and the car had to be retired. While the Breadvan didn't finish the race, it was clear that Bizzarrini had built a faster car. But by now, Bizzarrini's career prospects weren't looking so great. He was fired at Ferrari, the ATS venture had failed unceremoniously, and even his handmade Ferrari Challenger let him down. So this time, he was going to go at it alone. Bizzarrini set up his very own engineering consultancy called Società Autostar. It was during this time that he developed a certain V12 engine for a certain Italian sports car company which also happened to have a certain grudge against Ferrari. Bizzarrini's 3.5-liter V12 was the very first V12 to be used in a Lamborghini, beginning with the 350 GT, then the Miura, and after some modifications, it was continued to be used in the Countach, the Diablo, and even the Murcielago. An incredible feat indeed. But what Bizzarrini truly wanted was to build race cars. And soon enough, as if to grant him his wish, Bizzarrini was introduced to one Renzo Rivolta, the man behind refrigerators. In the 40s, Rivolta was in the business of producing refrigerators named Isothermo, granting him a fortune. And as all wealthy tycoons inevitably do, he ventured into the sports car business. Having seen success with ISO scooters and ISO Isetta, he reckoned that the world was ready for more luxury cars. So when Rivolta offered Bizzarrini to work on a GT sports car, Bizzarrini dived straight in. Bizzarrini argued that to sell sports cars for the road, the car needed a racing heritage. Whether he truly believed that or if it was just an excuse for him to go racing isn't clear. Regardless, Rivolta agreed under one condition: if the race car was a derivative of the road car. It was a smart decision from a financial standpoint, but Bizzarrini considered it a big compromise, as he had to bend one of his 3 rules of building race cars: equal weight distribution. A front-engine GT car would need heavy modifications for it to become a proper race car with good balance. So the massive 5.3-liter Chevy V8 was pushed as far back as it could go, and dressed with Giugiaro's gorgeous aluminum body, the ISO Grifo A3C racer was unveiled at the 1963 Turin show. It debuted alongside the Grifo A3L, the GT car which the racer had been derived from. The cars received positive attention, but the A3C was yet to be tested for its true purpose, the 24 hours of Le Mans. But the partnership was not to last. In 1964, Bizzarrini entered the car as a semi-works team. With Revolta wanting to make money and Bizzarrini wanting to spend money on racing, the partnership began to show its cracks. The Grifo A3C was built in Livorno under Bizzarrini's own name, while the road-going A3L was built in Bresso under the ISO brand. But even with the limited funding, Bizzarrini operated the team with surprising success. At the 1964 Le Mans, the Bizzarrini Grifo A3C finished 4th in its class, 14th overall, and hit a top speed of 172 miles per hour. But its true potential was realized in the following year.
Outre Ferrari et Ford, respectons les seigneurs, d'autres marques, d'autres grandes marques.
At the 1965 Le Mans, with virtually no support from ISO, the Grifo took home 1st in class, 9th overall, and hit a top speed of over 180 miles per hour. A legend was born. And then it died almost immediately. You see, funding a racing team is very expensive, and without a competitive car, the whole venture can drive companies to bankruptcies. While Grifo's massive success at the 1965 Le Mans was surely impressive, it's also worth noting that every other competitor in its class had retired before the end of the race, and the Grifo's performance in the subsequent races were quite disappointing. And as for Revolta, the cost of keeping the Grifo competitive was becoming a risky investment with little chance to claw back the costs. And the fact that Bizzarrini was running the race team under his own name made the deal even less appetizing. Revolta and Bizzarrini completely parted ways, but not before Bizzarrini obtained the production rights to the A3C. Now going at it alone once again, Bizzarrini changed his company name from Autostar to Prototipi Bizzarrini, and the Grifo A3C to the Bizzarrini 5300 GT. With the car and the racing team now under his total control, Bizzarrini began developing a purpose-built race car for the upcoming 1966 Le Mans. Commissioned by an American racing driver, Mike Gamino, the P538 was a mid-engined racing car, with the first chassis being fitted with a Lamborghini V12. But the car crashed during testing. So with very little time to pursue the 1966 Le Mans, Bizzarrini set his eyes on the 67 Le Mans instead, pouring his own cash into this dream of his with a ragtag group of university students to assist in operating his cash-strapped racing team. If that sounds like a recipe for disaster, it's because it was. In 1967, the P538, this time with the 500 horsepower Chevy V8, entered the Le Mans practice session, after which it was denied race entry. Some sources claim that the car was too slow, while others claim that the reason was unclear. Either way, it was a massive embarrassment. Bizzarrini's company never truly recovered from this, and in the following year went bankrupt. The company itself was very short-lived, but Bizzarrini continued to dabble in odd concept cars and one-off projects, like the AMC's mid-engined AMX3 and the Bizzarrini Chiara. But he also spent his time teaching at the University of Rome as Professor Bizzarrini. And on 13th of May 2023, Bizzarrini passed away at the age of 96, leaving behind a catalog of machines built with fiery passion and a myriad of one-offs that beget a list of what-if questions. What if he had never left Ferrari? What if he and Revolt had never split? What if Bizzarrini had found a proper backer? Thank you for watching this video. Those of you who know Bizzarrini well would also probably have heard of the resurrection of the marque back in 2020. They successfully produced and delivered the Bizzarrini 5300 GT Corsa Revival, hand-built cars using the original factory blueprints. And now, they are preparing to deliver a supercar, apparently, named after the genius engineer himself, Giotto. Very original. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.